Namaskaram. I have been asked to talk about using law and the judicial system for promoting and for defending human rights. All of you know, I don't need to tell you, that the state of human rights in India and perhaps all of South Asia is quite dismal. If you look at civil and political rights, well, the situation in India may not be terrible, but it is certainly not very good. As K.M.Chenoy told you, we have a serious problem with the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, which is enforced in the Northeast and in Kashmir. There is a great deal of pull and push. There is a lot of activism to get it removed from those parts of the country. There is also the push on the part of the government to increase its coverage to other parts of the country, of the government, particularly of the security forces. That, of course, is a very serious human rights problem because it provides almost total impunity to the security forces who violate the civil rights of people in those parts of the country where it is enforced. There is this new Information Technology Act, which is also being used in very draconian ways. Some of the provisions are very draconian, which greatly impact the freedom of speech, and people writing, criticizing people are often and have been held up and put behind bars for saying things which are offensive. Anything can be considered to be offensive. Any criticism can be considered to be offensive. It depends on the police officer, and therefore thereafter you have to fight your way in courts. And those who have access to good lawyers are able to defend themselves, and those who don't are suffering. But it's really in the area of socio-economic rights that the situation is even more dismal in India. Civil and political rights are still, as I said, not terrible, under threat in various senses, but socio-economic rights are under very serious threat and strain in India. Quite apart from the fact that a very large section of people in India are not getting adequate food or shelter or access to clean drinking water, the more serious problem is that there are a large number of people who are today being deprived by the actions of the state from even the shelter that they have. So there is large-scale forced displacement going on. Of course, there are also very valiant battles being fought, resistance movements across the country resisting forced displacement. And therefore that's an ongoing battle where, to some extent, the onslaught of the state of forcibly displacing people from their habitats, particularly tribal people, because much of this displacement is to get to the mineral wealth in this country, which is on lands where mostly tribal people live. These are forest lands where tribal people live. So therefore, to some extent this has been stopped because of the resistance movements which are going on. But it is still a very serious problem. On civil and political rights, I forgot to mention, there is one other serious problem, which is the implication of innocent, particularly innocent Muslims in these terror cases. In these terror cases, we have seen that a very large number of innocent Muslims have been picked up by communal police organizations which today exist across the country, and particularly due to a communal intelligence bureau in this country, which has become thoroughly communal, as has become clear. And therefore, they have played a major role in implicating innocent Muslims in terror cases across the country. There is also a problem of, a fairly serious problem of implicating human rights defenders like Dr. Binayak Sen and various other such people in false cases. So those are also serious areas. But I was talking about socio-economic rights. They are under serious threat because a lot of people are not getting access to the rights, and those who have some even habitat or some shelter, a lot of them are being forced off that shelter. Street vendors, rickshaw pullers, they are just surviving at the mercy of the local municipal authorities or the police in most cities in this country. In the sense that we have not passed, this country has not passed that street vendors bill which had been placed in Parliament, but unfortunately which was to a very large extent based on a fairly good national policy for street vendors, but that has not been passed, with the result that there is no effective legal regime which protects the rights of street vendors in this country. Same thing about rickshaw pullers. Everywhere, particularly in metropolitan cities, rickshaw pullers are either not allowed in most parts of the cities or are completely at the mercy of the municipal authorities and the police authorities. So the question now is, how do we use the law and the judicial system to defend the rights or protect the rights of these people? There are three levels at which we can defend the rights of these people. One is to offer them legal aid. That's the sort of most basic defense of the rights of these people, but that I have been saying is to some extent a losing battle, because there are only a few human rights defenders and the sheer scale of violation of the human rights of people is enormous. And therefore, if we were to just provide legal aid to these people, we are fighting a losing battle. Even the defense, of course, it's important to defend innocent people who are falsely implicated in these terror cases, etc. But on that also I keep saying that that too is a losing battle, so long as we are not able to make the police officers who have willfully and falsely accused innocent people accountable for their actions. So that's the second level of defense, which is a kind of a mild form of or a form of offense. That is, you go after or you seek the accountability of those persons who are responsible for violating the human rights of these people. Whether it is these police officers or municipal officers who terrorize and go on extracting money from these poor street vendors or rickshaw pullers, or whether it is these police officers or intelligence bureau officers who have conspired to falsely implicate innocent people in these terror cases. It is only when some of them are really held accountable and sent to jail for their actions or severely penalized for their actions that this kind of willful and wanton human rights violations at the hands of the authorities and the police officers are going to stop. So I think that's an important part of the job of lawyers who are working to defend human rights of all these people. That is, whenever you even go to defend the rights of an individual person, all cases try and explore ways of getting the courts to identify the persons who are responsible for willfully violating the rights of these people and seek their accountability and their punishment. The third level of defense, and that's actually an even more effective strategy, is to seek systemic reforms. So, for example, police reforms. We know that there is no systematic way of complaining against police officers who abuse their authority, who wantonly violate the human rights of people. So, for example, there was a police reforms case in the Supreme Court recently where we got the Supreme Court to order some reforms in the police system in India, one of which was to have police complaints authorities which are independent of the government at the district levels as well as at the state levels to whom people can complain. It's another matter that so far 7 years have elapsed since that judgment was delivered by the Supreme Court, but even after 7 years, this has not been implemented in most parts of the country, and we are still struggling to get that implemented. But those kind of systemic reforms are important to push for because they take care of this problem in a systematic way for the future. So, for example, there is an ongoing case in the Supreme Court, another example, about street vending. As I told you, there was a policy, the National Policy for Street Vendors, which is a fairly good policy made in consultation with a lot of activist organizations working with street vendors. That policy was supposed to have been made into law. That law was introduced in Parliament, but it has not been enacted.